Niche 360. This is session number 10, and nice, beautiful number to call it a full circle in some cases. In Indonesia, 10 is the last number in the cycle of life. And for me, this is a great honor because I have one of my earliest mentors, Glenn Kirkwood, who is dubbed the referral guy. And I met this amazing man. Wow, how long ago? That was over close to 20 years, 18 years ago. And don't know how it all happened, but I ended up going to one of his franchise chapters called BNI, which I'll share more links on a bit later. And it just blew me away because for the first time in my life, I saw a person super successful, but they were in the category of being more giving than they were taking. And this was just something that I didn't come from the legal background I had. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Glenn, and please help me welcome Glenn to the show. Glenn, thank you so much for making time. This is an honor to have you on the show after almost 2 decades of not connecting.
Like I said, the circle of life, it's come about again. Hey, thanks very much. And I hope you enjoy what we've got to talk about, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So just to get straight in, could you maybe share with us, first off, you know, what the referral guy actually means, and how did you come up with that branding, or if you call it tagline? How did that come up for you?
Okay, so first of all, I'm about making connections, building connections, and sharing connections. Okay. The brand name actually came out of a default conversation. So I was actually in a business, and I hired a coach, and he was looking at me getting out and getting my voice out there. So I developed a newsletter, and I used to call it Glenn's Weekly Wise Words. And I used to release it every week, just a thought, and then send it out. Well, when he came on board, he said, it's just too long, Glenn. You've got to come up with something shorter. So I thought about the 3 something W. Make it sound like a radio station. And he said, you know what? That doesn't work either. It's not something memorable. And I just sort of said, you know what? I should just call it something stupid, like that referral guy. And then somebody else heard that comment while I was on talking to my coach, and said, that's great. And he went to the next meeting I was at, where I was a guest speaker, and they introduced me that way and said, hey, I want to introduce Glenn Kirkwood. I know him as that referral guy.
Wow.
And it just stuck. And we developed a brand out of it. And so I've been working under that brand now for, the last 18 years.
It's an amazing story. So I've never actually asked you this, and this is such a privilege to know you for so long, but how did you get into BNI? And because I know BNI is big on organic or referral marketing as one of their main key concepts to add to people's businesses, which we'll dive into a bit later. But how did you choose BNI, or how did BNI choose you? And you ended up being one of the most successful franchisees with multiple chapters all over the place. So could you share a bit about that?
Yeah, so just in short, a BNI chapter is about 30 to 40, up to 50 businesses, all from different categories, all working together to help one another grow their business by referral. So making introductions and finding contacts for one another. And if they all bring 2 referrals for one person, different people on the team, then they would then leave that meeting with 2 for themselves. So that's in a nutshell what it is. Well, I was invited. Oh, and another part of the backstory is my parents got divorced when I was 12. So I grew up with my mother and my sister. Anyway, we had a very successful importing business, and I attended my first ever BNI meeting by default. One of my clients invited me to the meeting and said, I need you to be a substitute. So that means when he wasn't there, I was to fill in for him. So I said, sure, you're a great client, so I'm happy to help you out. So I got there at 6:30. They had a registration table and a person there called the visit host behind that table. And I said, hey, I'm here to meet Tim. Apparently I'm his sub man or something like that. And they said, oh, okay. And I gave him my business card, and he looked at it and said, Glenn Kirkwood, wow, you look a lot like a guy that was here a couple of weeks ago. And I said, oh, who's that? And he said, Jeff Kirkwood, do you know him? And I went, wow. I have a father, Jeff Kirkwood, but I haven't seen him for 20, 25 years.
Wow,
my parents got divorced when I when I was 12. And he just went white and said, wow, he was here 2 weeks ago helping us build this group. And I said, you know what? Have you got his card? So he looked through
Oh, this is a great stuff.
the card box, and he pulled out a card and he said, yeah. So there's still more to the story, but I'll tell you that I kept that card and I called Dad later on.
Wow.
I then went into the meeting, and one of the philosophies of BNI is give is gain. So the members sort of say, how can I help you? Now, when 5 people asked me that, and I'm in sales, I sort of went, no one ever asks that type of question. They ask, hey, can we have a discount? Or can we agree to pay you in 30 days, but really pay you in 90 days? Or, what can we get for free? So I wasn't used to having someone ask, what can we do to help you? Anyway, I kind of blew it off. The next 5 people asked the same thing. And I thought, you know what? This is a whole G up story by my friend Tim. It's just a gag, but I'll play along, Another 5 people asked me the same thing. And I went, oh, you know what? So when the 16th person asked me, how can I help you? I went, you know what? I'm going to play a silly game. I would like an introduction to Michael. He's the buyer's agent at David Jones. And I haven't been able to get past his secretary. She takes my calls. I leave my number, but he never calls me back. Anyway, I enjoyed the meeting, and I left that meeting and I called my dad on the way out.
Oh, wow.
He was in a different state doing his weekly shopping. He recognized my voice and he literally fell to the floor inside the supermarket and just started crying.
Oh my God.
And he said, I've been trying to get a hold of you for 20 odd years, and you reached out, and and I had to have a conversation with him about, hey, you need to know I'm married. You've got grandchildren, the whole, wow, I can't believe how emotional I'm getting.
No, it's good. It's good. I'm with you. My story with my son.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Keep going.
So anyway, I informed him about all of that, and that's a whole nother beautiful story. And he passed away about 5 years ago, but I had a great relationship with him. We would ring one another 2-3 times a day. So I'm glad that happened.
Oh my God.
But if that wasn't enough,
I'm getting emotional.
About 2 weeks later on,
wow,
the 16th guy from BNI rang me and said, hey, listen, I want to invite you to a barbecue. Do you remember me? Met you at BNI? And I said, yeah. Oh, that's very nice of you. He said, I've also invited that person you wanted. And I said, what? He said, Michael, the guy that you wanted the connection with from BNI, the buyer's agent, David Jones. And I said, how do you know him? Apparently, when he went home after the meeting, he was telling his wife, and his wife plays mahjong with Michael's wife. Now, I didn't even know what mahjong was, but it's a Chinese form of
game,
dominoes.
Yeah. I love it. I'm trying to get my hands on it.
I didn't even realize that he had a Chinese wife. But anyway, they got to talking, and she said, yeah, that's what Michael does. That's what Carol's husband, Michael, does. So he said, come to the barbecue, don't talk business. Let's just have a get together. And on the way out, after a great barbecue, the guy says, tell me, what do you do? And I said, I'm an importer. I import from different parts of the world and I sell them to the giftware market. And he said, no way. And I said, why? And he said, I'm the buyer's agent of giftware at David Jones. And I said, really?
Oh, great.
And I wrote $1 million worth of business with David Jones over the next 6 months. And that was my very first meeting.
Wow.
So that's how I got into BNI. I later on ended up getting out of my business with my mother and then getting into business with my father, which was a whole other disaster family story. That's how I got into BNI.
Wow. Yeah, because I do remember the first time I met you, you're like something about your dad. So I knew there was a connection with your dad and BNI. And yeah, please go ahead.
Dad was the master franchise for Australia. He helped bring it to Australia. And then he grew it to about 145 chapters. And then while I was there, we grew it to about 470 I
Oh,
think.
it's insane.
Mm,
Gangbusters everywhere. No,
mm.
I saw the story. They were open like from the 80s and just a bunch of friends got together or something.
Correct. It started out by one guy, he's a marketing consultant and just wanted more business.
Mm-hmm.
And he just put 10 people in a room and came up with a simple one-page agenda to sort of say, hey, here's how we're going to run the meetings. And, you know, for most intensive purposes, it still runs like that today.
Mm,
It's a lot more sophisticated with a lot more training and development and
mm,
all that sort of thing, but it still follows that same agenda, right?
mm,
And it just goes to show you that when you come across a right sort of recipe that sort of works and connections, um, you know, people saw value in that. And
mm,
they, when they started, I've seen their growth. They out. Uh, there's lots of great stories here. One of them that I remember probably the most is B and I used to meet weekly, and its competitor used to meet fortnightly.
mm,
And
mm.
then they started tracking. One time, Ivan got on a radio show, and they said, you know,
Ivan's the founder,
um,
yes? I
yeah,
remember that, yes.
so you know, why do you meet weekly? And he said, well, we've tried it the other way. We just pass 63% more referrals by meeting weekly. My point being here is if you want to develop relationships with
Interesting.
people, you need to hang out with them, and you need to hang out with them often, build the relationship. I mean, you look at us, right?
Mm,
Um, where we've developed a foundation, you
mm-hmm,
know, many, many
mm-hmm,
years ago. So it's
mm.
easy to pop up a good house on it now
Yeah,
because we built the right
true,
foundation.
true,
Right? We've got a
true.
good slab, good framework. You and I can change the knobs and the doors and the windows and all that sort of thing anytime. But the
Mm,
foundation is there for a really
mm,
good friendship and has been. We can
mm.
pick up conversations
Yeah.
like just yesterday.
Yeah, true, true. Now this is really powerful. So just before I move from the BNI chapter into more where you're at, so what do you think you've learned the most about yourself being through that journey of BNI? Because I know their systems, and you know I have niche, which actually has some elements of some of their systems, like the one-to-one meeting and deals done, and
Mm.
the give a gain element is what I suggest people do. But what's the biggest takeaway for you over the years of working BNI that you've learned about yourself that
There's
has helped
two.
you in future success? Yeah.
There's two.
Mm,
Everybody's different, and to
mm,
embrace that change.
mm,
See, before BNI, I used to think that everybody thought the same way as I did.
mm,
And what I've come to realize is, and I thought when I started to realize that there were other people thought differently, I still thought that my way of thinking was the best way. Right?
mm,
It was very much an arrogant sort of approach.
mm,
However, I've seen different people come with the same approach and then end up with the same result. So I've learned to embrace people. And when you have a very diverse network, as I do now,
mm,
I have people from all different industries, from all different age groups, um, both, you know, male and female, but also different personality styles.
mm.
And there are some people that, when it comes down to referring or receiving information from, they're the best people to use. So
Okay. So when you
I
say
don't mean using.
personality, yeah, go on.
I
Sorry.
don't mean use as in, you know, abuse the relationship. I
Yeah,
mean to put forward to someone as a
yeah, yeah.
connection.
Just have him as a channel. In other
Correct.
words,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, makes sense. So when you say personality styles, I'm curious about that. Have you noticed any distinct ones? Because I've also been a big advocate in my coaching business to use a book, classic book called Personality Plus by Florence Latino. I'll
Hmm.
put it in the group later, but it distinguishes four main personality traits. But is
Hmm.
that what you meant by personality styles? And if maybe different, well, how would you diverse them to know this type would do this or that? What did you mean?
Yeah. So I remember Myers-Briggs,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I've seen lots of versions of that, the four different quadrants,
Yeah.
or disc profiling.
Yeah. Disc profiling. Yeah.
Um, so I think probably that's the most common one. But you've got people on one side, and on the opposite side, you've got process. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's the first one, and then of course, when you get that, I'm probably more people focused,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas my business partner is way more systems. And
Okay.
so when I'm actually looking to run a business, I don't want people who think like me. I want to
Mm.
surround myself with thinking like other people. All right. And I'm choosing people for their particular behavioral style for that particular role.
Okay.
So if you got me to do a job that was very task focused with no fun factor and no pimple interaction, I'm not going to last very long. I'm not going to be very successful at that. Okay. If you choose a role for me that's something in probably sales or communication or interaction with the public, I'm going to thrive in that. And so I'm probably very big now on using something that I was very, very against, thinking everybody should do it this way because that's the way I thought, right? But of course, you know, everybody's different. And so I've learned to embrace that.
No, that's really, really powerful. And what do you think are the challenges then that you might experience, or people like you in your profile experience in business, that you probably comes to mind of a lesson you had to learn to really solidify this decision you made?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, my big thing that would come up there would, you know, I just had to get out of myself. Right?
What do you mean?
Well, I just needed to pull my own head out of my ass because you are not the only person with great ideas. All right. And so sometimes you can't see a solution for things, yet a different behavioral style will see something completely 180 from you and see this is a great way to handle it. And if you're open to that sort of thinking, then you'll embrace it and sort of say, you know what, let's try it out in a small area of the market. And I can tell you that so many times I've been proven wrong. Happily so, because you can either have one or two things. You can have ego or you can have money. You can't have both. And so if you really want a profitable business, you know, I had to learn to suck up my own ego and sort of saying, you know what, what's really important here? You know, is it important that, you know, I get to look good? And I'll be honest with you that sometimes in my business, there are roles that I've taken on where that gets fulfilled for me, where I'm up on stage and I'll do the talking, but then I need other people then to sell whatever we're, you know, promoting or something like that. Yeah. So you've got to have a combination of both people, and ideas come from, funnily enough, the weirdest places. And the area that I'm looking at the most these days is from current clients.
Okay. So what is it that you may be looking for particularly, or clues?
Well, they give us feedback on what's working, what's not working. And if you are really embracing the listening process and ask them, hey, how can we make this better for you? How can we make this a better experience? What do we need to do? And then shut up and listen. They're actually going to give you the solutions. Now, I remember one in my B&I career, which was really, really solid, and made the last 5 years of my franchise, you know, so successful. We do training for each of the groups. So they're self-governed, so they have their own president, vice president, treasurer. And you can imagine that there are certain people that rise to those particular positions. Well, we try to get people to change them. But if you've got a group of 30 or 40, sometimes if the group's been going for a lot of years, it's the same people that sort of keep coming back. Yeah. And so they said to me, Glenn, you know, these trainings are 6 hours long. And we've had a full day of, 8 hours. The last thing we want to do is do 6 hours. And 5 of those hours or 4 of those hours is stuff that we've learned before. So how else could we solve this? And the only part of value to them was actually working out and planning a growth strategy for them for the next 12 months. And I went, that's the part that I enjoy too, because I actually don't like telling you the same information I have. And by the way, you think you're bored? I've got 40 groups that I've got to do this to, and I've got to do this twice a year. All right. So I'm definitely bored of it. Anyway, so they encouraged me to do something online. And I inquired about different platforms, how someone could do a course on the president role. And I did a lot of PowerPoints and all that sort of thing. And it came down to the guy that was going to build it said, that'd be 20 grand. And I went, wow, I care about these members a lot, but 20 grand, come on. We're going back to 6-hour trainings. Anyway, I persisted and I actually got something built for close to that, but not that much. And ultimately it became a platform that I then staged everything around, all of our learning around. I ended up then white labeling that particular product to a couple of other franchises, and it almost went global. So that almost became a product in itself. Wow. But what ended up happening for my teams were they then went off and did the learning in their own time, at whatever pace they wanted to. They just needed to get it done, right? I got to tick and flick, some compliance issues. And then when we really got together, we were only getting together for an hour, and it was a planning stage. And we made it really fun, because they've just finished a day's work. We turned it into a 2-hour event and made it very fun focused on planning out their 12 months. So that the dollar return for members in their effort almost doubled.
Yeah.
We went from something like 37,000. Actually, it was not doubled, 2.5 times, because it went from $37,000 per member, that was their average return, to something like about 78 or something. And it was amazing, because
that's unheard of.
Yeah. So I'd encourage you, don't just think that you're the one without great ideas, and even when you do, look at it from their particular point of view.
I'm loving this. This is really, really important. So connected to that, which we talk about often, is this aspect of mentoring and getting help and asking for advice from clients and things. But who are the people that have maybe impacted your life the most, that contribute to your success today and happiness as well?
Well, one of them is on this particular call. and I tell you why. I tell you why.
Yeah.
When you've got knowledge, one of the things you want to do is, you may have read it in books, how you want to pass on that knowledge.
Yeah.
All right. Because your brain can only store a certain amount of information relevant. I mean, it's got, billions of different pathways to store it, but whether or not your ability to recall that information at a moment's notice, right? So one of the things you can do is, by mentoring someone else, it also cements the learning into your unconscious sort of mind, so you don't have to worry about forgetting it.
True.
And also, what you're then doing is you're teaching them a skill of what something you want them to do, which in the number 10 is come about. You're now interviewing me. So, and I've seen the way that you've been over the last couple of years, and I'm starting now to learn from you. So I would encourage anyone to get involved in that particular process. It doesn't need to be, typically it was learned from your elders, and it was taught in, tribes and families all year round.
Yeah.
But in business, it happens the same way too. I'm typically a storyteller, so I'll wrap up an emotional reaction into a story when I'm on stage. Right? So that's what I'd say to, I guess, the mentoring process. And the other thing, that when you're a mentee the other way, make sure you participate. Because one of the things that a mentor loves the most is hearing that they're giving advice, is seeing how that advice has been put into action, so that you come back and you give them an update on, here's what I learned and here's what I put into practice. So when it happened for me and I was starting my business, I couldn't afford a business coach, right? So it was suggested to me to put, 5 knowledgeable people who I respected around a table for lunch. It cost me $100, right? Once a month. And the information that they got out of just being together was great, but giving me feedback, I was just like, I didn't even have time to eat. I was just writing down notes. Oh, that's a great idea. Try that. And then I then put those sorts of things into place, and then would come back the following month and going, okay, so what now? Because I've done this and this failed, but this worked. And really what they were just doing is just sharing knowledge with me. And they loved seeing the fact that they came up with better ideas, and they were more engaged with my business, because it was like they were reliving that sort of business experience, but I was doing all the work.
No, I totally relate with that. And so, I mean, you're a man I've seen, and this is one of the best inspiring stories for me, is as a student in the first early years of my 20s, maybe even earlier, coming to see you do your presentations, dressed so well. And I don't know if you remember the first time we met. In fact, I'll ask you that question later. But I've seen you still keep growing and taking on new challenges. But one thing about you that's never changed is this humility and transparency thing. You'd always tell it to me straight, and most times, as you remember, it hurts sometimes to hear the truth. But I would take it on because I knew it just came from that place of compassion. But you've accomplished so much, and you continue to take on challenges over the years, like we talked about, changing your profile and just recreating yourself as you've done, which is amazing. But what's been maybe your proudest accomplishments, or things that you've mastered lately that you are proud of about yourself?
I'm going to cry again. Okay, so one of my proudest moments is when I passed on that knowledge to my children.
Mm.
So this is a story going back a few years, but my daughter was doing. So sorry, let me go back a bit. So whenever I get on the phone, I
Mm-hmm.
get on the phone and I seem to pace the backyard, come in the door, at the back out the house, go back out the door again, down the alleyway, up the front of the house, down the side of the, and back in. So the girls over time have heard me do interviews or deliver speeches or practice speeches. When I write something out, I'll go over and over and over again, so it looks natural when I'm up on stage. Um, and they've seen me do that thousands of times. So one of my youngest daughters, Georgia, was preparing to do a show at school, and there were two actors, and one of the other girls came over and said, "Hey, let's practice this recital." And uh, Georgia said, "Well, why?" And she said, "Well, because we'll get better." And Georgia turned around to her and said, "No, practicing won't make us better. Perfect practice will make us better. We
Wow.
have to get an audience in front of us. We have to get dressed up and we have to perform the show. And
Wow.
we'll learn stuff through that." And I went, wow, okay.
Wow.
So listening to her say she got it at such a young age that if you want to practice something, if you want to be good at something, right? Because I all get it. Some people let fear control them and they
Mm.
don't go out there and do and have all these amazing experiences.
Mm.
But that's only, you could look at it a different way and embrace fear and use that to be the catalyst for you sort of going, okay, I don't want to be getting out on stage and not knowing what to say. So how am I going to prepare for that emotion or response for when it comes up? All
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar to that moment that I just had before. You saw the emotion well up in me. I mean,
Mm.
people will either cry or laugh or sweat. They
Mm.
can't help that. It's a chemical reaction. I
Mm.
couldn't hold back the tears since I'm thinking
Mm.
about my father. And
Mm.
one of the things I've learned to do is, if you really want to be a great speaker or great in front of people, is to just go with that,
Mm.
even if it takes you to points of you feeling you're vulnerable.
Mm.
Vulnerability is a fantastic way to connect with people. And it doesn't come from them being vulnerable. You have to place yourself in that particular position first.
Wow.
And I saw nothing but love in your eyes for seeing me, in Australia going through this. Wow, this guy is on the interview and he's getting really emotional, but there was nothing but love and care from you.
Mm.
So
Mm.
yet I was always worried, well, if you cry, what will everybody think?
Me too.
Complete opposite. What
Mm.
happens is people coming and going, wow, that's so good. I love that story. I connected with you and I thought that was me, you know?
Mm.
So that would
Mm.
be my two stories. Make sure that you get out there and do perfect practice and to think about really going to that authentic uh, space of vulnerability.
I think we're gonna unpack authenticity and vulnerability in another chat. But let's go back
Okay.
to your daughter because I remember we talked about another thing that your daughter said back to you that you've always been saying over the years, and she played it back to her friends. But how did it make you feel hearing her
When she
take?
said that,
Yeah, yeah.
you know what is one of the proudest moments of being a parent?
Mm.
One of the things that you don't know until you have children is you don't know how you're going to be as a parent. And you have
Mm.
this worry about, am I going to be a good parent? And what is my role to do? And lately I've come to realize that my role is not to protect my children, right? My role is to prepare them so that they have skills necessary to embrace life. And life throws a lot of different things at you.
Tell me about it.
It throws challenges at you. It
Mm.
throws uh, activities and tasks at you that you're going to fail at. And I wanted to teach my children that failure is okay. All right, you have to fail in order to succeed. And yet we score things on, like, hey, what'd you get in your report card? Did you get an A? You know what? You got to get a couple of D's to
Mm.
work out. Okay, well, that didn't work. And well, what do I really want? Well, if you want this is what you got to do. And so seeing my daughter at that age, and I think she's probably been about 8 or 9
Yeah.
when she did that story. So it was about 10 years ago.
Wow.
When I heard that, I sort of went, you know what? I've been a good dad.
Yeah, done good.
The second one was, have we got time for a second story?
We have time. We're
Okay.
gonna do another many takes. I'll get you back on the show if that's okay.
Okay.
There's so much to unpack here. But this is
So
great.
I had my
Let's go.
daughter once. She told me that she was smoking, and so I got onto Facebook, which my kids hate it when I get on Facebook. So I got on Facebook and said, you know what, I think I'm a really bad parent. My daughter's smoking, and how will I cope? And I think the post was really around me, right? Anyway,
I should see this.
about 187 people commented, all right?
Wow.
And at about 188, Montana chimed in.
Wow.
And she said, Dad, and she made a comment. And then all of these, she couldn't believe that I posted it, right? And then about another 80 after that were all, hey, Montana, your dad just really cares about you. Anyway, that led to a really great story at the dinner table. And I was also there going, you know what? If I can have my daughter tell me that she's, been smoking, that's something that took me 28 years to fess up. And I really don't think I've ever actually told my mother that I smoked. So Mum, if you're watching this podcast or interview, there was a time that I smoked, right? Yeah, that's right. But I sort of think, well, how comfortable is it if my daughter at that age could sort of say, hey, Dad, I smoke. And that meant for me that we'd created an environment where she was going to be open. And that's really all you can hope for as a parent. Your children to be not always agree with you, but to sort of say, this is what's going on for me and this is what I'm doing. Right.
No, that's a great share. And I was just thinking as you were sharing, because I heard you say back to me about what's actually the shift in your parental style of being a great parent or trying to equip our kids for dealing with the world versus trying to protect them and make it perfect. And then earlier you mentioned that sometimes us as men, we have a story of when we cry means we're weak or this and this. Where do you think all that comes from? And how do you think that maybe also translates in the way we do business and interact with intimate relationships? I'm sensing that that's kind of where some of these factors are coming from, some past predisposed story we might have, you think? What's your view?
I think it's to embrace change and accept that things are always evolving. I mean, you can't in business these days stay the same. If you say, you know what, I don't want to do this Facebook thing or this TikTok thing or this Snapchat or whatever it is. I mean, you can still be like a dinosaur and sort of saying, you know what, we've always had a fax. Well, the thing is with technology, things move at a rapid rate. And so you need to be embracing things. I'm not the best at Snapchat. I'm not the best at TikTok either, but I'm having an account and having a crack and sort of working out, well, how does this sort of work? And just having a lot of fun along the process. I think a lot of that came from your parents are trying to let you know what's going on in their lives and they raise you up on the way that they were brought up. But if they recognize that really they had some challenges with their parents too. And that's why I'm different. I'm not going to try and put cotton wool around my children. I'm just going to try and sort of make them learn their own lessons. And that's the hardest thing about being a parent is that I have to accept that my children are going to get heartbroken. I have to accept that they're going to lose money. I have to accept that these things are going to happen because I'd rather they happen while I'm here and can sort of say, well, what do you think about that? Do you want it to continue or do you not? And then be a guiding or mentoring. I think business is exactly the same. I think you can sit there and go, you know what, I know it all. But if you don't embrace technology, or you don't embrace people telling you, and that's the conflict that a lot of entrepreneurs have because they have this deep-seated idea and they get it in the head that I know the way it's got to run and no one treats their customers like I do. And you know what? If you want to scale, you're never going to do it if you've got that sort of approach. Yeah, you have to allow other people to come in, fail at tasks that you know that you can do better, right? But if they did it 80% as good, then you can scale a business like that. But you can't scale a business by trying to make little mini yous. It
Yeah.
just won't work. Just
Gee,
won't work.
that's a big one. That took me a long time to let alone comprehend and then actually allow myself to do that because you care so much for your baby. And in business, I think I was going to ask you a few questions around that later. But while we're still on the topic of family and intimacy, I was curious because this is something I've been battling with in my career.
Mm-hmm.
Is how what's been the challenges that you've faced being in intimate relationships while being an entrepreneur, and how do you actually navigate that? What have been the reflections on that? We talked
I'd love
about
to.
it earlier. So.
I'd love to say I did it well, but for a
Mm-hmm.
number of years, my intimate partner, my wife, I neglected that relationship because I thought what I needed to do was to bring in the money. We made the conscious decision to actually have children and her to be a stay-at-home mum, right? And therefore I would go out. And what that did was create distance. And then I started getting some success in business. And so I was away, which was just taking me more out of the home. So I was away from 4 in the morning till 10 or 11 at night. And so I'm building my business at 4 a.m. To say 8:30,
Mm-hmm.
building and developing new chapters and getting new clients coming on board. Doing a whole bunch of meetings during the day. And then, of course, I'd be doing talks in the evening, some paid, some not, but getting in front of lots of people and getting a lot of recognition, awards, that sort of thing. And someone said to me, hey, if you don't take your significant other along the journey, it's going to create a big split. And, I tried to. I don't think I was open to really sharing what was going on at that stage. So ultimately, that's where I am right now.
That's
It's
interesting. Why is that, you think?
I think you're asking some really good questions and getting me to think. I think, honestly, I think I wasn't allowing someone to help. Certainly at a really, really close level. Now, I do run things past her now, and she's very appreciative and she likes being included, right? But at the time, I didn't because I knew it all.
Mm.
It's not a good way to be. Not a good way to be. And even when you're failing, I wouldn't share those with her and sort of saying, hey, what do you think of this? What could I have learned? Wouldn't ask complete, and sometimes I'd have conversations with complete strangers who didn't know me. All right, yet I would have been better to ask people who knew me and said, hey, what is it that I have that is not working? And not that it's a fault or a problem with me and I didn't need fixing, but I needed to plug that hole with someone who was good at that. And for a lot of years I just used to think, well, that's all right, we're going to do it my way, and I'm going to do it all. And some of the things I'm crap at. The older I've got, I'm 54 now, I realize that I'm really only good at about 3% of things.
Okay. Like what?
I'm fantastic at that 3%. I'm fantastic at showing people and how to develop relationships. I'm fantastic at telling them how to actually get them to give towards others so that it builds up that level of desire to reciprocate back. All right. And get them to acknowledge and build that relationship. I can get very connected with people in a short amount of time and get them to really open up and then wanting to help me. Right? That's leverage. But when it comes down to implementation, all that sort of thing, I might not be the best person for that. I've got other people in support teams. The same way as a lot of the people listening to this particular call, and yourself, you've had to learn that. Going, you know what? I can get more accomplished if I sacrifice a little bit of the income, give it over here, and get someone else to do that.
That's true.
And they call it if you write yourself out an org chart of all the tasks that have to happen in what it is you deliver. And then when you start out a company, you envisage where you want it to be in 5 years' time, say. What does that company look like? What's the revenue? What's the staff? Right? Okay, well, today is day one and your name is in all of those boxes. Right. And your job is to find people to fill those boxes. Choose the boxes you want to do. And that could be the bottom box. It doesn't matter if that's what you like doing, or it could be the top one. There's no real hierarchy sort of It's just who's going to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And then how do you make those people responsible?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. No, this is really powerful. And I think the next time we get you on, I would love to explore with you the difference between position, titles, and accountability and responsibility. You
That's
know?
a really good one, because when I was the owner of BNI, right,
Mm-hmm.
I had a position title.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so everybody had to know me in order to get into the group. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I sold that business and I went out on my own, I didn't have that title anymore. So the only thing that I had was the connections and the relationships. Now, for about 3 years, I struggled because I wasn't able to contact those people. Right. Part of my franchise agreement says you can't reach out to these individuals.
Mm.
So I struggled because I was like, and I'd been making, technically cold calls,
Yes.
and
Yes.
people wouldn't call me back. And I'm like, but don't you understand?
Do you
I'm
know
the
who I am?
relationship. That's right. Do you know who I am? That's right.
Damn it.
And I sort of went, wow, so this is what it's like.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I hear
But then I just started implementing, we run a training, but the short of it is choose 20 people and learn to give to those 20 people. I mean, everything. Stalk them on Facebook, LinkedIn, everything. Learn what's important on in their world. Is it their children? Is it a soccer team? Where'd they go to uni? What sort of courses they like? Where do they like to eat? Everything, right? And then over the next, pick a time frame, 30, 60, 90 days, be in communication with them and sending them something that's important to them.
Mm.
And I can promise you, all right.
Mm.
So it's a program that we run, but if you do it in the right sort of way, people really stand out and sort of going, wow, look at that guy. Why is he always giving to me?
Mm.
Here he is again, giving to me.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden you pop up and say, hey, could I have this? Oh, absolutely, no problems. There you go.
Wow.
And you can
Well, I
really
think that's
stand out.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think there's a section I want to ask what you're working on that's working, and I want the people to know more about your programs.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can get into that a little bit more. But just back to something you shared that I think is very useful, particularly was for me in our journey together, and more just when I was on my own doing my own little thing, was this aspect you touched on some maybe poor behaviors or characteristics that stopped you in the past to achieve success in a more sustainable way. So are there any other behaviors or characteristics from your past that you had to change from your past for you to become a more rounded sustainable person, and if so, what were they?
Yep.
Mm.
Okay. So the number one thing that I had to work out is um, I don't necessarily judge someone on what they say. I judge someone on what they do.
Yeah, me too.
So I remember this one very distinctly. Um, Now, I'll frame this up and sort of saying, I'd spent all my money on buying the franchise, right? So I didn't have any money. And I got this group up to about 14. And at the time, just say membership is about $1,000, right? So I've got $14,000 worth of income, but I can't bank it yet until I get to 15, right? And they just stopped inviting. In order to recruit and get larger, I get them to invite the people that they know, because it's better from a referral point of view. And they
Mm.
stopped inviting. And my mentor at the time said, what's your challenge? I told him, and he said, give them back all their applications. And I said, no, 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 Frank, you don't understand. I've got no money. How am I going to explain this to my wife that, you got that close and then you give it back? He said, Glenn, you've got 14 people who don't understand that they have to actually take action, and you're wasting your time with those people.
Oh, this
And I
is
went,
good advice.
really?
I'm getting uncomfortable here. This is hitting
And
home
he's
for
like, but Frank, and I'll be honest with you, Frank, I'm going home and we're eating potato and rice. That's how broke we are, right? I'm so close to having a big payoff. And he said, Glenn, I'm telling you, do this. And I went, okay, Frank, I will. And I'm going to get emotional because I remember back how hard it was then.
Please,
So I
please.
went back and I told my wife, I said, listen, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to hold in a little bit longer, because I'm going to have to give back all these people their applications, and we won't be able to bank the money. And she backed me. She said, "Don't worry about it. We'll be fine."
Wow.
I've
Wow.
had potatoes so many ways that you don't know, right?
I know.
That
2 minute noodles, mate.
that woman made them fantastic. All right.
Wow. What a
Um,
story.
and do you know what happened?
Mm,
I learned that them saying, putting their money on the table and saying, "Yeah, I want to be a part of this," wasn't enough. They
hmm
actually, I had to clearly communicate, "Hey, I'm looking for people with $1,000 that want to do this, that are prepared to also invite and build the team."
Whew, that's
Within
tough.
4 weeks, I had 2 groups of 30 up. I had $60,000.
Wow.
And so I had to sort of go around, like, instead of running around like begging people, "Come on, invite, invite, invite." I just
Hmm.
sort of went, you know what? I've just got 14 people who just don't get it, and I haven't communicated this, and that's my responsibility. So I'm going to give you back your applications and thank you very much. Right. And then went on. I actually had to have that story, learn that twice. Right. But the second time I had money behind me, and I just sort of went, what did I do? I got really good at identifying those types of people. And I had a meeting, told some people to invite people, and I walked out and I said, "I'm not going to do those types of meetings anymore." And I set everything up. Everybody arrived. I didn't say anything. I placed a lemon in front of all 17 people. I walked
Hmm.
to the board and said, "I've just given you a lemon. Tell me the things that you'd love to do with it." And I don't know if you've had those moments when you talk, there's those
Hmm.
pregnant pauses
Mm-hmm.
and they're awkward. 4 minutes and 19 seconds went past and nobody said a damn word. But
Hmm.
I held true. I didn't say anything. And then finally someone said, "Well, I don't even like lemons." And he did it to just break the ice, I think. And I went, "Okay, I don't like lemons." I wrote it up on the board. And someone said, "Yeah, I prefer oranges." And someone else said, I wouldn't do
Hmm.
anything. This is ridiculous."
That's
And they gave me a
wow.
whole bunch of negative stuff. And in the
Excuses.
end, excuses. So in the end, I just got my bag back. I packed up all the lemons and I started packing up all my stuff. And I was just about to walk out the door. I've got a projector, a computer, and all that sort of thing. And someone said, "Hey, I thought we were here to learn about BNI." And I said, "Yeah, I did too." But see, one of the things I noticed in BNI is I want people who want to think in a positive sort of mindset, right? So had you guys have said, make lemon meringue pie,
Mm.
use it,
Lemonade.
lemonade, or all creative
Yeah.
things, they're the types of people that I'm looking for. But I got a whole bunch of excuses and stuff like that. And I've been here before. I'm not doing this again. And I just collected up everything and I just walked out. And I never saw any of those people ever again at BNI. Now, it wasn't because I insulted them. It was because I just had another 17 people that this wasn't right for. And so I just sort of went, you know what, no problems, but I'm not going to put myself in where I was giving week after week after week after week after people. And so I think if you can
Hmm.
learn something
Profound.
out of that story about, you
Yeah.
know what, there's plenty of Muppets with money. But what sort of person do you want in your business?
Hmm.
Because if you have a product that's just transactional, I'd challenge you on that. I don't think it is, but if you want to get referrals, you've got to make it relationship. And
Agreed.
so therefore you've got to get people really ingrained in what it is you do.
Hmm.
Yeah, hopefully that's
That
helpful.
helpful is an understatement. My niche concept has a few BNI elements of
Mm-hmm.
referral, give us gain. And I had to make a similar call on a couple of chapters. Went into 5 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Zoom made it easier for me, and I had to bring it back to one chapter and literally terminate some presidents.
Yeah.
And that was really, really difficult. Now I'm getting emotional because some of these people were really good friends as well. Because I knew by making that call, it would also impact our relationship, in some way. And now I think it'll get stronger with the ones that do return. But it was very, very different. This was not long ago. It's just around the transition with COVID, March, April time. So as you were sharing, and I think what I wanted to acknowledge you for here is being a business coach who's got businesses and trying to translate these information to people who haven't gone through these tough times of where it doesn't make any financial sense. but it's the right thing to do, and you go and demonstrate that courage by making the call because you have values or standards that you live by, or at least you take great advice from a mentor, again, like you've been for me. Sometimes I've doubted myself in the past, um, because I was like, shit, but that maybe doesn't go with a business strategy. But it's right for me to do this, and it's not out of ego or arrogance. So the question I have there for you is, what would you want the past self, what would you now advise your past self on advice you'd give, of things you shouldn't do in business that probably matter beyond the numbers? Because this is something I think you're going into.
I've got a great story for this one. There
Mm.
was so where I set up the greatest area of my region was about 2 hours away.
Mm-hmm.
And I got it to the point where I had lots of people, a team of great business owners that were also members themselves, that were working on my behalf, and they were visiting groups, making sure that everyone was following what needed to have happen. And as I said to you, there was one group that didn't send the leadership team, the incoming leadership team, to leadership team training, which meant, technically speaking, they actually didn't have people trained to going into those roles. And we were just about to do the rollover. So Paul was visiting the chapter and he said, what are we going to do? We ran 2 trainings. They didn't send a team to either one of them. And I went, we have to close them. Now, this was a group that was probably about 38. So they're probably generating $38,000 worth of income for us. They're a very healthy group by all intents and purposes. On the outside, they're generating lots of money and doing everything right.
The numbers were good. Yeah.
Numbers were good. Members were happy. But I made a stance and I drove up there and I poked my head around the corner and everyone said hi, and they were in their meeting. And they said, oh, Glenn, welcome. Thanks very much for coming along. What has you here? And I said, well, and I was really worried about it. I was sort of saying, as you know, we've run a training, we've run it several times, and I'm really, I've got some difficult news to tell everybody here today. And I didn't want to just send it by email. So I've turned up in person. You know, I don't look after this group anymore, but I've driven 2 hours in the car to tell you in person that I need to let everybody here know that today is the last meeting of this particular chapter. And they went, what? And I said, well, as you know, we had people and they didn't attend training, and then we ran another training and they didn't attend that. And then we offered to do a special training and we didn't hear a response. And so as it's the rollover day, you technically don't have people that are trained as per our instructions and agreements, and therefore I can't, in all good consciousness, let you run another BNI chapter, all right, for the next 12 months. And so it's been a very difficult decision for me to make because you're running really well. However, I can't allow this to happen because of not this chapter alone, because if you don't do it, then it has a flow-on effect for everybody not turning up to training, and I can't allow that. So I won't let one successful group bring down, you know, all the years of hard work that I've been, you know, jumping in the car at 4 a.m. and traveling up for 2 hours, doing these meetings 5 days a week, and then jumping in the car and driving 2 hours home to amount to nothing. Anyway, they really, they gave it to me. Now, if you think about it, when people are, and I had to role play that in my head too, if they were going to be angry, that meant that they were passionate about it and they still cared. All right. If they just went, oh yeah, okay, no problems, whatever, it meant nothing to me, I did the right thing.
Exactly.
Right. So either way, I felt like we were going to be in a good seat. To their credit, they really roasted me. And I said, yeah, look, I get all that. All right. But this is really serious. All right. They said, well, what can we do? And I said, okay, well, I've paid for all of it now. So if you guys want to hire a venue and hire the catering and pay for myself and Paul at a commercial rate to come up and do the training, you find all that money to do that, then we'll come up and do it. And therefore you can run,
business as usual.
Yeah, business as usual. And that's what happened. So my example, your question really was, have you ever thought of a moment you would go back? Actually, tell me this Tell me the question again.
Now, like, what would your future self give advice to your younger self so that you could
Never,
prevent some of
never
this?
let, never,
Mm,
never let any one person be bigger than the team.
mm, mm,
So this is
mm,
one chapter against a team, right?
mm,
Very, very difficult decision for me. I was going to lose $38,000 from it, um, and we tried to do everything, but I just thought, no, not going to do that when we're talking about a $500,000 business. So,
wow, I'm with you. I told, and it's just so funny because to try and explain what you just went through with people who are just coming in for the numbers is very, very difficult. But this concept I'm seeing a lot in a lot of the very successful people that I admire, that I would love to emulate,
mm-hmm.
is you gotta have standards, you gotta stick by them. They don't even
You
have to
got
make logical
absolutely.
sense.
What do you
Would you
think?
agree?
Someone at McDonald's sort of going, you know what? I don't think we should have pickles. All
Mm,
right. I mean, they're selling a system. All right. And I admire the fact that you stood tall, because one of the hardest things to do is you build relationships with
mm-hmm,
the organizations that you set up.
mm-hmm,
One of the challenges is making those friends accountable in a situation. And that's exactly what you did.
mm,
You draw the line in the sand and sort of saying, hey, this is the standard. This is what everybody participant deserves when they've participated in here. And you're not following the guidelines. So how can I help you get to the guidelines? And how can I help you run these meetings? And if you don't want to do that, how can I help you? Well, one of the quotes I always like saying, hey, no problems. I don't want to make you wrong. Do you want to choose your replacement or should I? And they look at you and going, what? I'm like, that's it.
mm.
Just put it back
I'm
on
taking
them.
note.
And
I love
yeah,
that.
that's a great one. That one. I really like that one. Do you want to choose your replacement or should I?
Wow. Wow. Now I'm gonna use that. That's very good.
Mm,
So coming back to this thing of gut, like you were trusting your gut in this experience, and this is a question I had
mm-hmm.
especially for you because I feel you have a good sense of people and feelings. But what do you think then when a business person says, "Oh, I trusted my gut," or I had a feeling about that and I executed it? What do you think people mean? Or what do you mean by gut feeling? And what examples could you share with us on how better to understand this skill that's very consistent with successful entrepreneurs?
Okay, so I think within meeting somebody, like when I met you or when I meet anybody, I think
Mm,
you have a reaction to them. And I
mm,
think females call it, their intuition, men, their gut instinct. Um, if you don't listen to that instinct, then the next time that comes up, it will cost you a relationship or it'll cost you financially.
mm,
And so you've got to get good at listening to yourself, right? When your body gets sick, right? You might sweat or you get ill or you get a cold, something like that. That's your body telling you, hey, not everything's right. Okay. From a business point of view, you need to be looking at your cash flow and you need to be looking at the levers that make a difference to your particular income,
mm-hmm,
right? Whether or not it's you're looking at conversion for prospects to clients, whether or not you're looking your retention, your existing clients. Do we need to sell more? Do we need to cut costs on where we're running the operation? There's lots of different levers that you can do that matter to the bottom dollar. As a business owner, it's your responsibility to do that. If you don't trust yourself in those particular moments and follow, the cash flow sort of effectively, you're not going to be running a very good business. And
mm,
yeah, so I think you should follow your instinct more often, act
mm,
on it.
mm, mm. So how do you define instincts then, and how did you get yours strengthened over time that could help a recent upstart to say, hey, really listen to this part of intuition and trusting your gut instinct?
Well, usually I'll come around to a product or a service that I think that will be good out there in the marketplace. I'll throw it
Mm,
out to a couple of people and I'll listen to them. They might say yay or nay, and I might still have a persistence to keep pushing through. So I might keep testing. But there's a couple of people that I run it past. I run it past someone who has taught me on what are the risks, and how can I minimize those risks. So I'll have an instinct to come up with a new product, a program,
mm-hmm,
and then I will run it through going, okay, so what are the risks in actually how we communicate this? What is the risk about bulk email? What's the risk about putting it out on Facebook or putting it all in, Do I do 10% of the market? Do I do 100% of my database? Is this for everybody? So I'm always going to run it past a lot of questions, run it past a lot of people. That's why they're called beta testing, with software. They're just going to run it past a couple of individuals. You look at the way big businesses do it all the time. McDonald's don't come out with, hey, we've got a great new burger. They're testing the marketplace. They've run it behind the scenes for a while in a think tank. They're bringing it to market. If that burger is really successful, it's going to boost sales. And that's what they're trying to do. So I think you can learn a lot from when you look at big business and think, what's the reason they're doing that?
Yeah.
And then just emulate it in your small business.
I love that. And connected to those levers you're talking about. So what for you at your stage now in business success, would you say that you're facing current challenges? And this will lead me into the current situation of New Times, but what are the current challenges that you're facing today that, maybe affect how well you could express yourself in your full potential?
So our biggest challenge at the moment is finding consultants that want to back themselves, right? So I've gone away from the model where we happily say, hey, come work for me, I'll give you $100,000, right? I'm like, do you think you're good at sales? Yep, great. Then back yourself. Here's the way that I'm going to pay the commissions. I will do all the training, and I will grow you into that particular role. I might give you a couple of $1,000, $500 a week. And at the end of the 4 weeks, you can work out whether or not you want to stay here. But until then, I'm just going to train you on everything, and I'll take you through some prospecting tools to get you up and running. But after that, you need to be on your own. And you've had examples of in that in previous businesses. I'm very big on that sort of thing now. And that minimizes a lot of the risks for the business. But that's the challenge that I've got at the moment, finding those sorts of right people that are ready to back themselves. And so that's one. I guess the second one is probably, at the moment, we've got a lot of clients who will throw us money and then don't want to do anything as a result of it. So we've got really good at doing the pitch, then they come on board, then they go to the next meeting, then we prepare like a quote, for argument's sake, they accept that quote, they pay the money, and then they go, that's it. I'm like, well, you do realize we're going to do all of the work. We just need you to do one or two things, and they're dragging the chain. So that's where I'm at with this particular business model now. And we've started preparing a training for those people. But I think, I can't believe that some people just don't have contact lists, CRM systems. I'm like, what about all those business cards you had? What about all the connections you've made over the last couple of years? They just look very transactionally. They haven't stored them. They've not tried to build relationships with people. So when I turn around sort of saying, hey, I've got 16,000 in the CRM system, like, and I've got another 30,000 on Facebook sort of thing. And they're like, what? I'm like, look, I'm not extraordinary. That's just the people that I've been chatting to. Aren't you building relationships? Not everybody is. So
that's a really interesting part. So let's bring it even into the personal context. So what challenges then you might be having currently, if you don't mind me asking, in your personal life that might be also affecting your business life?
Oh, well, there's many aspects to my personal life, and my fitness is one of them, and that is going great guns. I'm crushing it at the gym.
Yeah, see.
Then there is the business side of my life, and that's going really well. On the other personal side of it, it's not going so well. So on a health side, great. On an emotional level, not so good. You know what? When one of those is out of kilter, it does affect your work life. Yeah. I'd love to, pony up and sort of say, it's really good, but you know what?
I'm with you.
I sit there and I've never experienced jealousy before, ever. I trust, right? But I've gone through some moments of jealousy, and I'm sort of going, what? Won't spend time with me, but spend time with someone else. What's going there?
Yeah.
And all these doubts. Yeah. I think when that happens, it's definitely affected some of the decisions that I've made in business. But the people close to me, even though they're a new relationship and a new business, I've tried to be as open and just transparent. So they're very supportive. Even my gym, because they're a client, I let them know what was going on for me. And they sort of said, you know what, Glenn, don't worry about doing the next work. We'll still pay you. we know you're going through a bit of a tough time.
Mm.
So
Powerful.
how would I handle that? So I think you've got to get your rocks together there at some point. Have a very good support network around you. That's what I'd say to that
Mm.
one.
Mm.
If I didn't have a good accountant or a good financial planner that cared and I built a relationship with, or friends and family that just reached out and sort of said, "Come on, we're going out, can't stay home and wallow all the time." I definitely could have fallen into depression,
Mm.
and I think at some point I was, which a lot of people recognized, and then I pulled myself out, which is just I'm really good at accountability. So I'm sort of
Mm.
going, "Hey, Glenn, you can stay here and wallow as long as you like. You can swim in your tears if
Mm.
that what really gets it off."
Mm.
But hang on a second, let me just pull up this. So this is a note now that I say to myself: I'm
Mm.
resilient, encouraging, abundant leader. And when I found myself that had that personal situation, I became a follower. And that's not me.
Yeah.
That's not me. I just, yes, sir, no, sir, no. I'm someone who likes to get out and lead from the front and saying, come on, let's go this way. And so I'm back to my old self again now because,
Mm.
I just allowed myself to sort of going, you know what, maybe it was a little bit of grieving, but it's not me. Get up,
Mm.
man.
Mm.
Make a difference.
No, thanks for your vulnerability there. I feel like, and I was saying this earlier, so many people are staying in that one bucket of business success, financial success, but they're very not so vulnerable and transparent about maybe areas of their life that may not be working. So I just wanted to share that. I really appreciate that. And that's why I was hopefully confident enough to share that question back to you, because I knew you would share honestly that I think, life has a lot of contrasts, and I think sometimes we're so busy on one side of success metric, we don't understand it's almost like a combination of all things do matter and affect each other. So it was really nice for you to share that you could be successful and still be unhappy in some
Yeah, correct.
situations,
Correct.
and but it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you.
I
It's just
think
the process.
success has meant different things to me at different times.
Can you elaborate?
So um, I love my Porsche.
Mm-hmm. I love
I'm
your
buying
Porsche.
another one, right? Um,
Yeah.
but I don't think that is the definition of success. For me, the definition of success is the lives that I've impacted, how I've made a change. Um, uh, I'd, I want to, I want to affect more people. I want to teach them that you can have anything you want out of life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Just help enough other people get what they want. And
Mm.
that's a quote by Jim Rohn.
Jim Rohn, yeah, I got that from you though.
Yeah,
That was good. I love that. Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. So, is there anything? Just a few final questions here, but is there anything that you currently fear in life at the moment, if any?
Fear?
Or scared of, or afraid could happen?
Not anymore.
Hmm.
No. Um, I'm very big now at using that as a driver to go and just take the experience.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
look, life is beautiful in that it presents us with lots of experiences. Now, some of those experiences I've loved, and some of those experiences have challenged me, right? But those is where I also got a lot of growth.
Hmm.
So if I'd go back in time, would I change anything? No.
Hmm.
All right. Because whilst it appeared at the time that relationship didn't work and why doesn't she like me or why didn't this go ahead and why was that crumbling? Um, they actually shaped me to be the person that stands before you today. And I've learned to embrace that and sort of saying, you know what? I could be like this person. I could be like this person, but I'm not. I
Hmm.
just want to be the best version of me all the time. I don't
Wow.
need to compare myself with other people.
Yeah.
It's taken a
Powerful.
lot of years and a lot of work for me to get to that particular point because for a lot of years, I was just living a life that I thought other people wanted. And it was just me being a little bit spineless, sort of
Hmm.
saying, this is what's important to me
Hmm.
because I've seen a lot of it lately. I'm sort of going, you get one life. Don't get to the end of it. Don't listen to, 70, 80, 90-year-olds and sort of saying, I regret doing this because
Yeah.
you're right where you are right now. And I used to think 54 was old. No, I'm
Hmm.
halfway.
Hmm.
So there's still plenty of
Easily.
opportunity. There's time. And you can sort of saying, but it's my life.
Mm,
and I want to live it the way I want to, and I want to live it bigger than what I want.
mm, mm. I love that. So that actually brings me to this question, which is really fun. We'll wrap up with a few more, but what then does full potential for you look like? Living your life to your full potential. What does that look like for you?
This is one that I've struggled at over many, many years. All right.
Mm,
Um, because and I've always been like, oh, well, this is my space. Okay. I'm looking at that now and going, that's really small, Glenn.
wow.
Why would you really only want to be that small? I never thought about more. I'm sort of going, if you're a little fish and you swim in a little pond and then you get taken out to the ocean and going, oh my God, how long's this been here? Right.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm thinking right now. Right now, we've really perfected a product that is going great. Um, it has a component in it where a client comes on board and they refer us to four.
Mm,
It's only in one particular area, and over the next, say 20 years, I'd like to see it be a player as big, if not bigger, than BNI.
wow. That's
I,
huge.
yeah, that's how big that I want to go
Fantastic.
with this. So right now
Fantastic.
we're doing every type of failure we can,
I love it. I
and
love it.
pushing it. And our mantra behind it is because we've got clients who make $25,000 from the sale, and other clients make it from one. So it was our hardest thing for a little while there was to how do you price something like that? So we had to actually come up with a mythology behind it. And our fee mythology is we believe that people should be paid in direct proportion to the value that they add. So if they don't add any value, you don't pay them anything. If they add a lot of value, pay them well.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything that we do has to be designed to make that a slipperier slope for the client, make it so that they hear what we've got and it's effortless all the way to get the to do business with us, and then get business flowing in for them.
Mm, mm.
So
I
there's
like
no
because the
reason
thing
why that
also,
can't go global.
no, 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 I love that. So that was actually my third last plug is what are the projects that are really lighting you on fire that you're working on that maybe people listening can reach out, or you've got social media handles that they can reach you at, ask questions just to continue the relationship with you. What would you recommend? And what product would maybe be a good example of what has worked for someone?
Okay. So if you're in financial services, so accounting, legal, property investment, general insurance, wealth creation, financial planning, if you're in that particular space, definitely have a fantastic product that is actually just crushing it now. You'd want to be someone who actually is at no more than 70% total productivity. If you're more than that, our product won't be the best for you because we'll make you too busy too quickly. You need to be in a growth mindset and have the capacity to service that growth.
Mm,
So for those people, I would say hit me up on Facebook under my That Referral Guy page. Um, if you're a small business owner and you're looking to grow, but you come from a field outside of that, then you should jump into my Facebook group called The Better Business Place. We host a range of very talented, actually, you're a guest a couple of weeks ago,
mm-hmm. Sounds amazing.
people in that particular group. Our goal there is actually to help people run a better business. But in the next couple of months, I'm actually releasing a new product that helps everybody generate more referrals from their network. And very similar to what I was just explaining before, we go into more detail about how do you choose those 20 people, how do you find the information to relay back to them, and how do you actually get your message across where you're giving to them. I think most people understand that, but then when is the appropriate time to ask?
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and, and
that's
how
great.
do you tell them, and how do you want to be remunerated backwards?
Oh, wow.
So we show people on how to do that. So
Very
I'm running
interested to
a,
join that again. Yeah, I'll
yeah,
join that
well,
for sure.
cool. Yeah, we're running a free event, and that's we're putting that inside the Better Business Place Facebook group.
Great. When is the dates and time for that? I'll definitely
I
put that
think we're
on.
probably going to release that one in about 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, okay. So if it's okay with you, just we'll forward that earlier, and then I'll put that await the interviews and
Okay,
get a couple of my network in to join with you. That I think that'll be. I
cool.
think of at least 10 people in my network that would really benefit from that.
Okay.
So that'd be fantastic. And just final few questions. So I always ask this at the end of the interview process, but before I do, just wanted to say, Glenn, I have nothing but love for you for so many reasons. One of them is you just opened my eyes to a way that I felt Africans was always, we call it the Ubuntu
Mm-hmm.
principle, which is if it's good enough for us, it's good enough for me. But
Mm-hmm.
when I went to Australia, if you remember, you met me as a law student maybe those
Mm-hmm.
days, and I was doing all sorts of sales jobs on the sides. But I felt this always need to negotiate, hedge, or hide information until I met you. That you said to me, it's actually, you gave me permission to be myself. And I just wanted to acknowledge you for this gift you have of compassion, generosity, and tough love. At least with me, I don't know any other
Mm-hmm.
people that came with the
No,
period
no,
I was in,
no.
but.
I'm going to be good on that one too. You
Cool,
asked me a
good.
question earlier, and I sort of said, always be clear in your communication.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
it was never for anybody watching. It was never vengeful. I never said, you
No,
must
no,
do this, but it
no,
was
no.
always,
Well, I
hey,
took it. Yeah,
I'm going to call you on that,
yeah,
Aaron, and
yeah,
boom, and you're like, whoa.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was really, really good. And maybe just on that note, you could share with the audience, because I've been on this journey. A lot of people are following me now around 5 continents. But what's the one thing that maybe stood out for you that you could share with another upcoming entrepreneur about why you chose to even engage me and invite me to these things? I knew I wasn't your demographic. And I look back at what the BNI profile of picking candidates is. For whatever reason, you invited me to that first BNI, and from there, the world just opened up in a different way. But what was it that you recall that said, okay, as you said, gut feel or whatever? But I think for me, what I'm trying to say is not to put shine light on myself, but really to encourage young people to be more audacious, to talk to people like you who are successful and not feel intimidated. But maybe they need to hear from you on the other side of what are the things successful people look at when they say, okay, I'll take this young guy on and give him a shot. So what would you recommend, or what do you remember from that?
I remember it very vividly. Okay, so for everybody listening, I'll let you know that Aaron didn't fit any of the criteria that
Thank
I
you.
would have for
Stuck.
for joining what we had. All right, none of it. If a scale of 1 to 10, 0. All right,
Zero. Minus.
0.
I couldn't even get two English words together. I'm still learning my English. Australian, rather.
but so why would I do that?
Mm.
Well,
Why'd you
it's
take the
very
risk? Yeah.
it's very easy. Um, he was ready to listen. So for the parents listening to this, you can sit and nag your children to do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. All right. And the example that I have is when Georgia was running in a concrete next to a pool, and some kid had splashed some water, and I said, no running near the pool, no running, no running for years, right? This time she was running, slipped over, gashed a knee, all right? Now, when she got the stitches and everything like that mended up, she came to me and she was ready to listen, right? Now I understand, don't run. Okay. So after I'd done that particular meeting with Aaron, I was up on stage and Aaron came to me and he didn't meet any of that criteria, but he was ready to listen. All right.
Mm.
So why wouldn't you nurture someone who is ready to listen? Because ultimately, for me, the other 10 factors didn't matter. Now they might later on, and look what's happened. All right.
Mm.
He's gone off to really have a stellar career, influence some powerful leaders and people. If you're listening to this, you are now listening to him. Right. And so that's made a change in his direction, sort of going, you know what? This made a difference to me. So if you really want to impact the world and you really want to make a difference in people's lives, it doesn't start out with 1 billion people. It starts out with someone walking up to you and saying, hey, tell me about this.
Mm.
And you
Mm.
identifying that as going, this person is ready to hear what I've got to say.
Mm.
And you take as long as they give you, because that's when they're ready to listen.
Yeah, wow. That's really great advice. Thank you. And I never knew that about why, because I always wondered being this really shy kid in the corner, underdressed, and I was like, what am I doing here? But it changed my life, and I wanted just to say again, thank you so much. I'm eternally grateful.
Did
So
I offer to pick you up or did I just make you catch the train
you
out?
made me catch the train, and I was like, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I've never been. It was somewhere out west. And I had no money for that. You didn't ask me if I did or didn't.
No, that's right.
Stole it from a friend, actually, I think. But I came back a different person. And from there, Like I said,
Best
they just
$20 you've ever spent, wasn't it?
oh my goodness. Yeah, because you made me pay for the breakfast too. I
Yeah,
remember
correct.
that. I was like, what sort of
Yeah,
I actually thought it
yeah,
was a job. I came with a resume,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, what a crazy. More of that next time. So last final two questions. This one I like to ask people at the end just to kind of send you off as well. But let's just imagine, with all the great work you've done, the people you've connected with, the amount of business you've helped people generate just through having this give again mentality, and now you've got your brand up and it's become the most successful. But it's actually your time to go from this world and go to the next game or the next life, and you can't leave anything behind. But there's a piece of paper with a pen, and there's three final truths about what mattered in life that you want to pass on to future entrepreneurs. What would those three things be?
Wow, this is a really good one. Okay. This is a really good question. So this is my three parting words or three parting phrases?
Three parting words is fine, or phrase, whatever feels right. It's just lasting lessons that people say, wow, this is what Glenn was about, or these are the lessons I can take on and hopefully get the same results.
Okay. Number one, life's a journey.
Mm.
Number two, back yourself.
Mm.
Number three, embrace every experience.
Hmm. Hmm. That's beautiful. Really well said. I like those, particularly the back yourself one. I've heard you tell me that a few times.
Yeah.
Final question. What does entrepreneur success mean to you?
Well, that's changed over the years. When I first started, it was very financial. You know, the first group I ever set up, I think I really didn't care. There are two things that I needed to have for them to have. I needed them to have a checkbook, and I needed them to have a pulse. And one of those ones I really was optional. The pulse, as long as I had the checkbook.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, but later on, as businesses evolved, I sort of going, you know what? There's a lot of assholes with money, so they helped shape me sort of, and they came into my life to sort of say, not to be an a-hole, but more to sort of saying, hey, you've taken on anybody, so they're really going to challenge you, and they did, and I sort of went, no, that's not really what we're about. That's really not the ethos. How did I allow that person to get in? So. I'm always reminded, if I had one room and it was one door in, and once someone came into the room, you can't let them out. And that's your life. I'd get very cautious about who I would choose to let in. So can you run the question, ask me again, because this one's really stunning.
No, it's beautiful. What's your definition of entrepreneurial success?
Okay. My definition of success would be to have people remember, or for me to have made a difference in someone's life, so they start thinking about how can I give to someone before I worry about what can I receive from them. That would be my definition of success. And if I can have that on a global level, that'd make me very happy.
Wow. Glenn Kirkwood, thank you very, very, very much for this opportunity. I knew it was going to be great, but this just took it to another level. Really appreciate your time, and definitely going to have you back on the show.
Mate, you're welcome. Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks.